Well, hello to my subscribers over Texas, Oklahoma, Arkansas, and surrounding areas. This is the weekly water outlook for November 18th, 2012. Thought I'd start off by a big picture of the nation so you can see where the rain fell. As you can see, once again, very dry over the southern part of the nation, the south central part. No rain whatsoever in this area right here. Very little, if any, rain whatsoever. Some lighter amounts of rain brushed the far eastern part of Texas and the eastern half of Oklahoma and much of Arkansas. Much of Arkansas received rainfall. Almost all of the state received some rain, and actually is very welcome rain with a ½ inch, and those areas in yellow nearing 2 inches. As far as Texas go, like I said, very little rain except for the far eastern part, the central and western part, as well as of Texas, as well as Oklahoma, received no rain whatsoever over the entire week. Percent of normal rainfall, this clearly shows the red below normal rainfall, 25% or less. And you can see very broad areas, and even the areas that received rain, much of it was close to normal. If you look at Arkansas, for example, you can see just very narrow stripes that areas of green and blue received above normal rainfall. So even with that rain, it still averaged out either close to normal or a bit below normal. Now, a lot of times, I look at the drought monitor, and that is based on impacts such as agriculture, stream flow, precipitation factors such as those. Here's a different one. It's the SPI, and this is the top left is the 60-day standardized precipitation index, and this is an accounting of precipitation, and it's only based on precipitation. And you can see, even from a national perspective, how dry it's been over the last 60 days. Almost the entire nation is in that red, which is showing significant rainfall deficits. And if we look at the southern part of Texas, Oklahoma, you can definitely see from most of Texas, most of Oklahoma, significant rainfall deficits. Then as we get into the eastern part, not quite as bad over the far eastern part of Texas as well as Oklahoma. Now, you might have noticed in my messages I sent out this week, I've been looking very closely at the chance of precipitation later this week for parts of Texas as we got close to Thanksgiving. The big question was whether this upper impulse would lift out and how strong it would be. So what the setup for this week is that we're going to start out the week with the jet stream once again to our north, and then later in this week there'll be a very small impulse moving through here. This is that little dip right here. The weaker the impulse, the less likely it is going to be able to provide the lift and provide moisture to be able to transport it with it, especially when you consider how dry it's going to be. And right now, it looks like it's going to be very weak, and even though there will be a chance of rain, I think the rainfall amounts over Texas and Oklahoma are going to be very insignificant. Maybe a little bit heavier east, but even then, pretty insignificant. So I wish I had better news. I guess at least there's something we can look at, and maybe some rain will come out of this. It's better than nothing like we've seen week after week. But unfortunately, it looks like it's going to be a very weak system. Looking a little bit further out, as far as the Arctic oscillation goes, I did want to mention that, as you probably know, I've been talking about, it's been positive here now for a couple weeks, and these alternate on every 2 to 3 weeks, and it does look like as we get towards early December, it could go negative once again, and there's a possibility of a transition with that as it goes negative. I did want to show the 6 to 10 day jet stream here, and for the 6 to 10 jet stream, we basically have a flow from west to east across the nation, and over the south, pretty much this is going to continue to be a quiet pattern. I don't see any big changes with that. There's not going to be any strong impulses embedded in that, and matter of fact, most likely the temperatures will be above normal. That area of red is above normal pressure anomalies, and that could result in a bit above normal temperatures. So the precipitation forecast for week 1, at least what this model is showing, is some light amounts of rainfall over the state, especially south central Texas. As we get more into the north central part of the state, the yellow is indicating lighter amounts of rainfall. I think we're looking at maybe at the high end, other than maybe an isolated spot, maybe a ½ inch or so, and in many areas even lighter than that. And as you can see over the panhandle and the far southeast, at least from this model, is indicating no rain whatsoever. So I really don't want to play this up much at all. It looks like light amounts of rain, but with no rain for a long period of time, at least some rain will be welcome. And I'll be following this very closely throughout the week, because I know the rainfall is very urgent in the region, and I will be covering this in more detail. Maybe there's a chance that things could change as we get later in the week. Week 2 is interesting, and I pointed this out for a couple reasons. One is that it does show a very significant change, most likely in association with that Arctic oscillation beginning to transition. These transition periods are when we would have the best chance of precipitation. Having said that, and this is out of that towards the end of that 6 to 10 day jet stream. Having said this, I always encourage you, don't get too excited about these models as we get this far out. They flip-flop from one model run to another, and one of the things I would want to look at is for a number of model runs and a number of different models if it shows this. So I'll be covering this as well very closely if this would tend to occur. Right now, I did want to mention that there is a strong correlation, though, with this Pacific Northwest pattern and then an axis of rainfall that goes from Arkansas up into the Ohio Valley. We haven't really seen that get into place yet, but there is that possibility. Right now, it's too early. As far as the mid-November update of ENSO update that came out last week, and right now we're solidly in neutral ground. We're holding pretty close to anywhere about +2 to plus 0.4 degrees Celsius anomalies of sea surface temperature. And what we see here is a strong consensus of models of pretty much holding it right where we're at as we get through the winter months. And there's a more and more confidence, I think, at least from the model standpoint, that it's going to do that. If we look at one of the questions I had was, what are the chances of going into La Nina? Well, the blue is La Nina, and you can see the months here, February, March, April, for example, right here, January, February, March. Very low probabilities of going into La Nina. Very high probabilities, 70%, of staying in neutral. So I think at least from the models here, and we don't have too much more to go on other than models that far out, is that it will be a neutral winter and not a La Nina. Okay, so as far as soil moisture goes, if you look at this pretty closely, you can see some very light shades of green here, and this is indicating over the next week the possibility of some very modest increase in soil moisture, nothing to get excited about. I would actually say it's closer to neutral, and I think that's how I would sort of hold it. Really, with this rain, the areas that do receive rain, pretty much holding your own, at least not getting worse. But anywhere outside that axis of rain, probably a little bit worse as far as soil moisture. So to the west and to the east, it'll be worse. No rain whatsoever, 25% or less precipitation, and that will be pushing in to the western part of the state of Texas as well as the western half of Oklahoma. The band, or the enhancement of precipitation, I've outlined in yellow. That could change a bit as we get through the week, and like I said, I'll be covering that. But again, I think the most that's going to do is sort of hold its own as we get through the week. So for the most part, I think the story is mainly dry, some light amounts of rain that could help in a few areas, but for the most part, continuing soil moisture deficits. That later in the week will be that modest chance of rainfall, but right now I'm not impressed with it. It looks pretty modest, and I will be issuing updates to this throughout the week. If you're not a subscriber and you happen to be looking at this, I want to urge you to consider subscribing. There's a lot more information that I issue other than these videos. I will be issuing the update on my newsletter at the end of the month or the first week in December. A lot of information on climate and weather. I issue weekly updates as well. So I want to wish you all a happy Thanksgiving. Hopefully we'll bring some rain to you for Thanksgiving. I think that would be welcome. And I want to sincerely thank you for being a subscriber to Blue Water Outlook. Thank you for listening. I will be updating this next week.